A well-known drag performer is accused of meeting up with a 13-year-old boy through an online app known for hookups. But here's the thing. He didn't know the boy was 13 because the boy admitted to posing as an 18-year-old. So is this case as black and white as it seems? We're taking a look into what police and the 13-year-old boy are alleging. This is Inside the Crime presented by Law&Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. Now, right off the bat, I just have to say this case isn't indicative of a whole community. But what makes this case so unique from other cases like it is the 13-year-old told investigators he arranged for the hookup, not just with one man, but with two. Aubrey Ghalichi was a known fixture in the Phoenix drag community. She appeared in pride festivals, club appearances, photo shoots, you name it, which is why you can imagine the reaction to hearing of her arrest. Aubrey's real name is Michael Browder. He was arrested last month on 2 counts of sexual conduct with a minor. His arrest stemmed from an investigation involving a 13-year-old boy that began in June. According to ABC 15, the 13-year-old, whose name obviously is being withheld, told investigators he posed as an 18-year-old on an online dating app. It's unclear which dating app it was, only revealing that it was an app kind of meant for hookups. And just gotta clarify here, hookups for adults. So the 13-year-old reportedly told detectives he arranged for 2 adult men to meet him for sex, but at different times. According to ABC 15, the teen allegedly told police he didn't know who the men were that he contacted. When Phoenix PD recovered the boy's laptop, they were able to see the conversations the boy was having online. And that's how police recognized the man who was allegedly chatting with the boy. An officer reportedly recognized Michael from the conversations because he was a known Phoenix drag queen. On September 16th, Michael was brought in for a police interview. During that interview, he allegedly admitted to meeting up with the boy to engage in sex. He claimed he didn't know how old the victim was because when they met up, the apartment meant for an adult rendezvous was really dark. Michael allegedly told detectives he was under the impression the alleged victim was actually 18 or 19 years old. But even though the 13-year-old admitted to arranging the hookup, Michael was arrested and held on a $10,000 bond. Phoenix Pride announced that they would remove Michael or Aubrey from their list of scheduled performers. In a statement, the organization wrote in part, quote, "Out of respect for our community and in alignment with our values, Phoenix Pride has removed Aubrey Ghalichi from this year's events lineup. We are working diligently to update all promotional materials to reflect this change. Some items have already been updated, while others distributed by outside advertisers have already gone to print and may still display their name. But please know that they will not be appearing at the Phoenix Pride Festival. It is important to emphasize that this individual has not been convicted of a crime. Their removal is based solely on the information currently available to us and our responsibility to ensure a safe and affirming environment for our community. The crime alleged is one we find reprehensible and entirely contrary to what Phoenix Pride stands for. We also want to acknowledge that seeing these reports may be triggering for survivors of sexual abuse. If you or someone you know has experienced harm, we encourage you to reach out for support. Furthermore, Phoenix Pride has never been made aware of any allegations against this individual prior to this past weekend. The individual disseminating this misinformation has done so before due to a personal issue with some of the volunteers and members of the organization's board and staff. Phoenix Pride remains committed to fostering safe, affirming, and empowering spaces for our LGBTQ+ community. We appreciate your support and understanding as we continue preparing for this year's festival. I'm joined now by trauma expert and author of Stolen Childhoods, Thriving After Abuse, and that's Sherry Botwin. Sherry, always great to see you, and thanks for joining me today. What's your reaction to this case? These allegations are super troubling, but what do you make of the 13-year-old boy saying that he's the one who arranged this meetup posing as an 18-year-old?
It made me think right away, what's going on in this young boy's life? What is happening in his family? Are people giving him what he needs, what he wants? I immediately always go to, when I hear stories like this, there's always a reason or there's the root to these type of behaviors and actions. So I'm curious to hear more about where he comes from and what he's thinking and what he's looking for.
And with the limited information that we do know about this 13-year-old boy, because we don't know much about his home life or his identity beyond the fact that he's just 13 years old. But, given the little that we do know, what do you think possibly could be the reason for him possibly arranging for or allegedly arranging for this and posing as an 18-year-old?
I mean, it sounds like this is a boy who's really yearning and hungry for some type of emotional attention. I don't know if where he comes from, if he's not getting paid attention to, or if he feels disconnected from people in his life, whether it's his friends or the adults in his life. Usually, when young teenagers are seeking out the support or the acknowledgement from adults, usually that means that there's some type of neglect or emotional absence that could be happening in his home environment.
So there's a reason that Law and Crime is the go-to spot for all legal and true crime content on YouTube. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys, and that's because they win a lot. They've recovered over $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. In Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million, 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. Another client in Pennsylvania received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. Even if you think your case isn't worth millions, why not start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan makes it so easy, you can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/insidethecrime by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on your screen. Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like in this case in particular, it wasn't that the boy was necessarily attracted to to Michael specifically because Michael was a well-known drag queen. According to the court records that were cited by ABC 15, the boy just didn't know much about the men that he chose to hook up with or allegedly hook up with. And so I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on just the access that this boy had to these online apps. Because I mean, you can just go into the app store, download an app. I don't know how much verification really goes into, asking for age verification in terms of when you do download it or even when you open it. But what does that say to you just about the access that teenagers have to these types of apps that they could easily just do it themselves, download it on their phone? They don't need their parents' permission.
These apps are so accessible. It's so easy to go into an app and just say your birthday, and you could say your birthday is whatever you want it to be that day.
Hmm.
There's not enough guardrails or adult supervision, both in the home, but also whoever runs the app. So I think it's one of those things where it's a setup it's a setup for disaster, basically, because if you have a teenager or a young boy who's trying to figure out how he can get what he wants or needs, and his phone is sitting there and he can just download these apps, it's almost like it tells us in society that we have two issues going on. We have issues with technology, and we also have issues with kids who are more at risk. And this sounds like a kid who's more at risk because he's seeking out the attention of basically strangers, people he doesn't know, people who are a lot older than him. And it sounds like he was smart enough that he knew how to do it to attract the attention of these adults.
Yeah, and everyone is innocent until proven guilty. But obviously, when you see a headline that says accused of sexually abusing a 13-year-old boy, that really stands out. But in terms of just the black and whiteness to this case compared to maybe the other cases that we've discussed in the past, do you think that is as black and white as it seems? Like there's a victim, there's a perpetrator, but it seems this is a little more nuanced than that.
This has so many layers of gray. There's questions that I have for the young boy and for the adults in the situation. One of the things that I had seen was the alleged perpetrator says that he thought that this young boy was 18. But then I
Hmm.
think to myself, but even if you think that they're 18, it's one thing to say you think they're 25 or even
Mm.
21, but to me, my first reaction was that feels like a cop out because anybody
Mm.
could say that. I thought that the kid was 18 because that's what the kid said. In
Yeah.
terms of the side of the child, again, like this is a kid who sounds like he's having some difficulties, whether it's internal and he's having mental health issues or there's neglect or emotional abuse or abandonment at home. We need to know a lot more about him. So this is definitely not a black and white case, and this is the type of cases that I hear about all the time because when people are troubled, they do what they can do to mask their pain, and all of the people involved in this case could be troubled in different ways. That's the thing. And I think the more we find out, it'll be easier for us to understand how did this even actually happen?
And it's also different in the sense that when we cover these types of cases, we see multiple incidents. We see this going on for a long period of time. It just happens more often. But from the understanding that I'm getting right now, it seems like this was just a one-time thing. In terms of just the legal space, do you think that matters? That changes anything if this case were to possibly go to trial?
I mean, what I would say to you is we think it's a one-time thing, but we don't really know because a lot of
Right.
times these types of situations go, they're left unnoticed, unreported. So when I hear that, I think I'm not sure if I don't want to say I don't believe it, but I think it sounds like the adults in the situation had some wherewithal to even just be made, they made themselves accessible in that way and they participated. The kid also, this might not have been the first time that this young boy found himself in a situation like this. So there's a lot of questions. I know when it comes to the legal system, we're looking at things like, is this somebody who's more like a serial predator? Is this a first time offense? In the legal system, that's stuff that you look at, especially when you're in the more like the sentencing phase and the
Right.
charging and all that. But there's just so much that we don't know. And there are so many times that these type of situations happen that we don't talk about that on your show because they're not cases that are reported.
And say what we're learning so far is true in the sense that maybe this was a one time thing. Maybe this was a situation where the 13-year-old boy did, as he had told detectives, did pose and act as an 18-year-old, all of that sort. What does that change for you in your mind, in your opinion? Say, for example, if you were to have to testify as an expert in a trial like this?
If I were testifying on behalf of the plaintiff, it would help me to really explain the developmental process and his age and what maybe he was thinking. If I were going to testify on behalf of the defendant, I probably would say because he got caught and this was the first time that he did it, here's the recommendations that I would make, and they would be more treatment based versus let's throw him in prison and lock the key because I do work with people who are first time offenders, and when they get caught and when there are consequences and treatment is mandated, there's actually some hope that that particular person may not perpetrate again because maybe they'll learn from what happened and maybe they'll get to the root of what actually led them in that position in the first place.
And I know socially there's been a bigger discussion that's been going on in terms of what Michael does for a living, in terms of being a drag queen, doing drag performances. And, basically my whole thing is that this is not indicative of the entire community or anything like that, right? In terms of the drag spaces, drag performances. I have friends who are drag queens, like I love it. But in terms of just seeing just kind of the stigma attached to this, where you do have a drag performer who is accused of sexually abusing a young boy, what do you think that says as far as the stigma goes in the LGBTQ plus community, that it just seems in a way it's unfair to the community as a whole, even though this is kind of a one isolated incident,
It is so
allegedly?
easy. Yeah, it's so easy for us as a society to go, see, look at that person and look what he or she did. It's so easy for us to generalize, but when we as a society do that, it just really takes the focus off the actual alleged crime and how to handle it. There are adults of all different types, whether they're drag queens, doctors, teachers, adults who have troubled histories or a history of trauma find themselves in these situations. So the problem in this case is that he may have to deal with being crucified on the stand because of his livelihood, and the lawyers will try to use that, I think. They'll use that against him in a way. So I'm hoping that he has good representation, that this case doesn't become about what he does for his livelihood. The
Right.
case becomes about what happened in this particular incident that caused this.
Right, exactly. And what do you think possibly, Sherry, if you had a crystal ball, what the outcome could possibly be? Do you see it going to trial? Do you see the charges possibly being dismissed? What do you see happening in the future if you were able to get a clear picture of it from a crystal ball?
I mean, I never want a case to have to go to trial for anyone. And I also don't want people to be let off the hook. If this is something that happened, he needs to be held accountable. If I could predict the outcome and have it be the way I would want it to as a therapist, I would say, how about you get everybody involved, some serious help? You mandate them to treatment and you help all three of them. There's two adults and one young boy really do some work on themselves and figure out what's going on. And I also hope for this young boy, there's some exploration in terms of his home life, his school life, his social life to find out what led him in that path in the first place.
And we'll see how this all continues to unfold as we keep a close eye on this case. Sherry Botwin, I want to thank you so much for your time and your insight into this case. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
As of this recording, it's unclear if police are searching for the second man reportedly involved or if that man's even been arrested or charged. Online records show Michael Browder is not in jail custody. According to reports, upon release, he has to wear a GPS monitor and is not allowed near children or allowed to possess weapons, drugs, or alcohol. His trial is currently slated for February. That does it for this episode. You can check out more episodes on the Law and Crime YouTube channel, but for now, I'm Elizabeth Millner, and this has been Inside the Crime.